They laughed when he disappeared. They said, "He finally gave up." They thought the silence meant defeat. But what they didn't understand was that silence was his weapon. Before we start, bro, if you've ever gone quiet to rebuild yourself, hit that subscribe button right now. Because this channel is for the ones who vanished into the dark and came back unrecognizable. Now listen carefully. He wasn't always like this. There was a time when his world was loud, full of people, noise, opinions, and pressure. Everyone had something to say about him, about what he should be, about what he could have been. They told him how to live, how to think, how to feel, and somewhere along the way, he started losing himself. He became addicted to proving himself, to being liked, to being understood. He poured himself into people who never deserved his energy. He fought for spaces that were never meant for him, and every time he tried to rise, someone pulled him down, someone laughed, someone reminded him of who he used to be. Until one day he stopped talking. No explanation, no warning, just silence. The kind of silence that makes people uncomfortable. The one that makes them wonder what you're planning. And they called him cold. They called him distant. But what they didn't know was that silence wasn't his retreat. It was his rebirth. He started walking alone. No phone, no messages, no noise. Just the sound of his own thoughts echoing in his head. And at first, it hurt. Because silence isn't peaceful when you're running from yourself. It's brutal. It forces you to face the truth you've been avoiding. But he didn't run this time. He sat in it. He took every piece of pain, betrayal, and disappointment and stared right through it. He began to understand that maybe losing everything was the only way to find himself again. You see, sometimes the most dangerous men aren't the ones who shout the loudest. They're the ones who go quiet. The ones who walk away without a word. The ones who disappear, not to hide, but to become. He stopped chasing people. He stopped explaining his worth. He stopped trying to be understood by small minds. And in that silence, he found power. He realized something no one ever told him, that when you stop talking, you start hearing. Not the world, not the noise, but your soul. And his soul was tired of begging for respect. It was ready to build something greater. Something unstoppable. People began to notice the change. His absence started speaking louder than his presence ever did. The same people who called him weak started asking, where did he go? The same ones who mocked him started saying, he's changed. But they had no idea what was coming, because he wasn't just changing, he was evolving. He wasn't just healing, he was sharpening. Every night in silence, he was learning, growing, preparing. Not for revenge, but for redemption. And while they were busy gossiping, he was busy becoming. He was mastering his emotions. He was building his mind like a fortress. He was training in peace for a war that no one saw coming. There's something terrifying about a man who no longer needs validation. A man who doesn't care to prove anything, but knows exactly what he's capable of. That's what he became. And that's why silence is so misunderstood. It isn't weakness. It's patience. It's the space between who you were and who you're becoming. It's the moment before the storm. He started showing up differently. His eyes, calm but dangerous. His walk, steady but unstoppable. He no longer reacted to insults. He didn't need to argue. He didn't need to prove he was winning. Because he was the win, and when people saw him again, they didn't recognize him. Same face, same man, but something in his energy had changed. They couldn't look him in the eyes anymore, because his silence spoke louder than their words ever could. He became the kind of man who doesn't announce his comeback. He just moves in silence and lets the results do the talking. So if you're in that phase right now, where you feel like you've disappeared, where no one understands you, where you're rebuilding in the dark, don't rush it. Let them laugh. Let them think you've fallen off. Let them underestimate you. Because one day, they'll see you again, and they won't know how to react. They'll whisper your name, not out of pity, but out of respect. And that's what this silence is for. Not revenge, not validation, but transformation. So don't fear being alone. Don't fear disappearing. Because real growth doesn't happen in front of people. It happens when no one's watching, and when you finally return, you won't need to explain a thing. Your silence will say it all. Silence became his sanctuary, but also his battlefield. Because when you cut the world off, you don't just escape the noise, you meet yourself. And that's where the real war begins. At first, he thought the silence would bring peace, but it didn't. It brought pain, memories, voices from the past that whispered all his failures back to him. The nights got heavier, the mirror got harder to look at, and every time he tried to forget who he was, that voice inside kept saying, "You're not done yet." That's the thing about rock bottom. It's not quiet. It screams. It forces you to see what you've been avoiding. And he finally saw it. He wasn't broken because of what they did to him. He was broken because he let it define him. So one night, he made a decision. Not a loud one, not a dramatic one, just a quiet, cold promise whispered to himself under the weight of the dark. Never again. That night, something shifted. The same silence that once felt like punishment became his weapon. He stopped waiting for the motivation to come. He stopped needing to feel ready. He just started. Every morning, he woke up before the world did. No applause, no eyes watching, no validation. Just him, the grind, and that voice whispering, "Keep going." He started rebuilding his body first. Because discipline begins in the physical. The weights didn't just build muscle, they built identity. Every rep, every drop of sweat was a reminder. I'm not who I was. Pain became his proof that he was alive again. Then came the mind. He stopped feeding it junk, stopped scrolling, stopped comparing, stopped chasing illusions. He filled it with silence, study, and self-respect. He started learning things no one could take from him: focus, patience, strategy. And when the world tried to lure him back with distractions, he didn't flinch. Because once you've seen your own darkness, the noise of the world can't tempt you anymore. That's when something rare started to happen. He began to fall in love with the process, not the outcome, not the validation, but the grind itself, the quiet mornings, the lonely nights, the moments no one clapped for. He realized that greatness isn't built under the spotlight. It's built when no one's watching, when you're doing what you said you'd do long after the feeling has faded. And every day, piece by piece, he built himself back. He stopped explaining his plans. He stopped announcing his goals. He just worked. And the silence started to shift again. It wasn't empty anymore. It was alive. You could feel it in the way he walked. You could see it in the way he looked at the world. Still quiet, but dangerous now. The man they called weak was now unrecognizable. Not because he shouted louder, but because he didn't need to. He'd built something within himself that silence couldn't hide anymore. Presence. That quiet confidence that comes when you know exactly who you are and what you're capable of. He began to understand the truth. Success isn't about proving them wrong. It's about proving yourself right. It's about keeping the promise you made in the dark, even when no one's watching. He stopped living for recognition and started living for alignment. He trained, he learned, he sacrificed, and he didn't post a thing about it. Because real power doesn't announce itself, it arrives. And when it does, the world feels it before it sees it. He looked around one day and realized something shocking. The people who once doubted him were still in the same place, still talking, still judging, still waiting for someone else to fix their lives. While he had become unstoppable, not because life got easier, but because he got harder to break. He learned that the comeback isn't a moment, it's a lifestyle. It's built through repetition, through quiet discipline, through the refusal to give up when no one's cheering. That's how you become dangerous. Not through rage, not through revenge, but through mastery, through silence so sharp it cuts through doubt. He became addicted, not to success, but to progress. And every small victory felt like a quiet explosion inside him. Not the kind the world could hear, the kind he could feel. Because that's what silence does. It lets you feel your evolution. And now, every time he looks in the mirror, he doesn't see the man they called a failure. He sees the man who survived it. The man who turned his pain into fuel. The man who went silent and came back dangerous. He disappeared, and for a long time, it was like he'd never existed. His name faded from conversations. His number was deleted from phones. The same people who once mocked him stopped mentioning him altogether, because deep down, they thought he was done. They thought the silence had killed him. But what they didn't know was that silence was his rebirth. He didn't come back to prove them wrong. He came back because he finally understood who he was. The man who once chased validation had become a man who walked alone and no longer cared who watched. He stopped explaining his dreams to people who couldn't see beyond their own fears. He stopped asking for support from people who never wanted him to rise in the first place. He realized the only voice that truly mattered was the one inside his own head, and that voice whispered something powerful. It's time. He didn't make an announcement. There was no warning, no hint, just quiet movement, quiet creation, quiet growth. Every night while the world slept, he built, brick by brick, habit by habit, piece by piece. He became sharper, colder, focused. His energy changed, and that's when the world began to feel it. People who once doubted him started to hear his name again. At first, it was quiet. Just a mention, a whisper. You remember him? Someone would ask, did you see what he's doing now? Another would say. Those same voices that laughed at him started to sound curious, then jealous, then scared, because suddenly he wasn't the man they thought they broke. He was something else entirely. He had learned the art of moving in silence, the power of not reacting, the strength of walking away from everything that didn't serve his purpose. His revenge wasn't loud. It wasn't a scream. It was progress. It was peace. It was success that spoke louder than any explanation ever could. Now, when he walks into a room, they feel it. Not because he tries to be seen, but because he doesn't need to be. His presence alone carries weight. His silence carries truth. His aura says everything they refused to hear when he was broken. He doesn't chase anymore. Not people, not validation, not closure. He lets everything come to him, naturally, silently, powerfully. And the ones who once mocked him now lower their voices when they mention his name. Because deep down, they know they created the monster they feared. Their doubt, their insults, their rejection, all of it became fuel. All of it burned inside him until it turned into purpose. There's something almost poetic about that, isn't there? How the same people who made him feel small ended up teaching him how to become unstoppable. He learned that real strength isn't loud. It's not about revenge posts or proving yourself online. Real strength is disappearing into the dark and coming back unrecognizable. He became the man they never thought he could be. The man they could have supported, but instead chose to break. And now they get to watch him from a distance. And if you're listening to this right now, feeling that same fire inside you, the same pain, the same loneliness, listen carefully. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. You don't need their validation. You don't need their applause. You need your discipline. You need your silence. You need your purpose. Because that's what builds kings. That's what separates the average from the unstoppable. Let them doubt you. Let them walk away. Let them laugh, and then vanish. Let them think you disappeared. Go ghost. Build in the shadows. Heal in silence. Come back when you're ready, not when they expect you to. And when you finally return, don't announce it. Don't post about it. Just show up, unrecognizable. Let your energy do the talking. Let your results make the noise. They called him a failure once, but now they whisper his name. Because success doesn't shout. It whispers. It moves quietly. It humbles everyone who doubted you. And it reminds the world that real power never seeks attention. It creates it. So if you've been broken, good. If they left you behind, perfect. That's your beginning, not your end. That's your fire. That's your silence. That's your evolution. The man who walks alone is the man who learns everything. And when he finally returns, he doesn't need revenge, because his existence is the revenge. His peace, his progress, his presence. That's what haunts them. Because they once thought he'd never come back. But now, every time they hear his name, they remember the one truth they can't escape. They built him. They broke him. But he rebuilt himself in ways they'll never understand. And now the whispers will never stop. Because legends don't scream. They move in silence. They rise unseen. And when they return, the whole world listens.